Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Bring the World Home, a production of the Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. Each week we explore the idea of service in one of the 132 countries around the world that the Peace Corps serves through visits and conversations with returned Peace Corps volunteers. Today we have with us Frank Lavoie, who was a volunteer in Armenia and in the Caucasus region. It was a very interesting part of the world. Frank was a volunteer from 1995 to 1997. Anyways, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we'll be able to explore some of the ideas of your service in Armenia. Just for our viewers, Armenia currently is hosting about 85 Peace Corps volunteers over since 1992. There's been about 580 volunteers that have served in Armenia in the areas of business development and education, health, and most recently in the environment. When you were there in 1995 to 97, you were a school teacher.
Yes, my job was to teach English. At first, the first 6 months I was in a grade school, and then I got transferred to a brand new posting where I was teaching university students there in English.
Okay. And Armenia was a former Soviet protectorate?
In 1991, they got their independence from the Soviet Union, one of the first non-Baltic states to declare their independence, and it really changed everything because their economy obviously collapsed more than it was already collapsing. They started a war with Azerbaijan over territory that the communists had divided between them, and they had electrical problems, water problems. It was really difficult time.
Frank, you just point to me where you were originally and name the town?
Okay, the first town I was in was Stepanovan to the north, above Vanisor, but then I got transferred to near Lake Savan, Kamo, which the new name is Gavar, because Kamo was a communist, but they now call them the old name Gavar.
And that lake, I understand, is the largest lake in the Caucasus region? Is that
right? It's the largest and the highest. And
I read in doing some research that there's an issue about sucking off so much of the water that water is becoming drinking water, good water is becoming a problem in the area.
You can see over the last 20 or 30 years how the water level has gone down dramatically, and they're finally trying to do something about it because it's really getting bad.
And your background is as a political scientist. Did you have a degree in
political science from Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wonderful. Were you, as a student, is that when you became interested in Peace Corps service, or?
Yes, actually during my junior year I took a semester abroad in Germany, and I lived in Cologne, and I really liked just getting out overseas and seeing a different culture and living in it. And that's when the Peace Corps people came around the campus, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a good way to get overseas again." Nice program, backed by Uncle Sam, you know. So I said, "Let's go for it."
Well, that's a great testament to Peace Corps recruiting efforts.
Yes.
And did you put in for a little background typical for Peace Corps service, or did you select Armenia as a
Everything happened really fast, actually. By the time I talked to the recruiter and turned my application in, they were telling me, oh, it's very difficult. It can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years and all this stuff. I turned it in, and then 2 weeks later, she had me on the phone saying, "We have a spot in Armenia for you. Are you ready to go?"
The old bait and switch, huh?
And literally, I mean, it went by so fast where I graduated, and 1 week later, I was on a plane to Armenia. And I had to rush to get all the medical clearances, and it was like amazing. Just flew through the whole process.
And the Peace Corps facilitated that for you, or was a hindrance to your smooth entry into service?
No, they helped out. They kept me going and made sure I got on that plane to Washington, where we based out of, and then got us to Armenia. It was very...
So you trained in Armenia. How many were in your group?
We had about 30 people, typical group for that time. Yeah. And initially we based out of Yerevan, the capital, and we lived with a family. And I lived with an old grandmother who was living alone, and then they'd house us and feed us, and then we'd go to classes during the day.
So in that era of 95, Peace Corps, I believe, was fairly new. Yes. We only started serving there in 92, so you said you were in the third group to go to Armenia. Everybody was in education in your group?
About 2/3 and 1/3 was business education.
Yeah. When you arrived in country, what did people think of you and of Peace Corps volunteers?
They're very interested in any foreigner, especially an American. And then we'd try. At first, they would think, "Oh, you didn't want to go into the army, so you have to do this instead." And I was like, "No, no, this is voluntary." And the whole idea of you would volunteer to live in Armenia when they want to all leave the country and go live in America or Europe or something, they just didn't catch on. And plus, in the Soviet Union, volunteering was something they forced you to do.
Yeah.
So the whole volunteer and just living in a country that was having trouble didn't make any sense to them.
Well, did that cloud their acceptance of you or their respect for your efforts at all?
No, I think they appreciated it, and they obviously latched on and tried to learn more about us. And most people would want to hang out with the Americans and just talk to us and find out what a real American was.
Armenia had become a republic. It has a unicameral parliamentary
one
kind
parliament.
of system.
They do have the three branches of government, and the Constitution, if you read it, sounds very much like the American Constitution. Just the actual practice of implementing it isn't anything we'd recognize. It's more of the leftover Soviet style. The government knows what to do, and we're going to do it regardless of what's written down. So as a political scientist, I love the fact that I was being sent to a former Soviet republic.
Sure.
And I was just soaking it up. I was buying all the Soviet memorabilia, medals, and stuff that I could find, and just talking to people like, what do you think about what's going on? And in 1996, we had the presidential election, and of course, the incumbent stole the election blatantly, and then there were protests, and that's when I didn't know the previous night there had been a big protest in town with the soldiers coming in, and so I hopped on the bus innocently coming in back to the Capitol to visit for the weekend, and there were tanks everywhere and soldiers and plainclothes people with AK-47s running around, and initially it's very scary if you don't know what's going on. But
Sure.
it wasn't towards foreigners, so we were fine. We could go around. But it was just scary that in all the parks the soldiers lived for about 2 weeks in the city.
And how did this affect your work at all? And by now you were teaching university level
Yes.
students. Was there any tension between your being an American and Peace Corps volunteer? And sometimes we hear, that Peace Corps is really CIA agents, and Peace Corps volunteers are there, trying to massage the system in some way, shape, or form. How did you?
That never affected me. One volunteer told me that in the town she was in, initially the police would follow her around, maybe because of that thing. And only a couple of times when I was taking a picture of a building, the guard would come out and say, "You can't take a picture of the building," and it's just nothing fancy. But for whatever reason, maybe the old Soviet system, like any government building, don't take a picture. But I was able to work with students. Being in the town or village, weren't really connected to the political as much as the students in the capital would. So I try to get them to talk about it.
Obviously, when Peace Corps is invited into a country, it's done on a governmental level, not on a local level per se. But did the old Soviet style mentality affect the way that you work, or provide more of a challenge?
Well, in the first town I was in, there was a little bit of that, and that's one reason why I left, because we were supposed to have an apartment set aside for us, and then just the day before we showed up, they gave it away to someone else, and we had to just find some other place, and it never really worked out. But in the second town, the local people were really good. The university director told me, "Whatever you want, you just let me know. Any problems, I'll solve it." And like I said, it was just the first probably month I was in the new town was just nonstop partying. People just knock on my door, say, "Come with us." Now, of course, in America, you wouldn't go off with strangers, get in the car with strangers, but I did it, and you just go to parties nonstop. It was really, they were hospitable. And one thing I really amazed about Armenia is if you just show up at someone's house, the women disappear, and within 1 hour, there's a full meal, out on the table, a feast, without any planning, and they just, boom, they just do it. And so it's, especially in the town I was in, Gavar, they were famous for their vodka drinking. And they would, the professors would be drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning, taking shots. I went into the post office to get my telephone hooked up. And the first thing they did was pull out the drawer and let's drink vodka first. It was fun.
You were teaching Armenian students, college students, university students, English?
English.
And how did they, do you think you did a pretty good job?
I did an okay
Tell us
job.
what your take is on your...
Well, this is the first
service.
university that was outside of the capital, so it's kind of a pilot program and I think first of all, in Armenia, only girls study foreign languages for a profession. So I had all 18-year-old girls in my class, not a single guy.
Wow.
It was fun, but it was more, they had to get a diploma to hang on the wall, and then they would still just get married and stay in town, maybe become a school teacher, but there's really nothing beyond that. So a lot of them, probably a full half of them, didn't really pay much attention, and sometimes that got me upset, but I just accepted the fact that this is the way they live, and I can't change that. And the ones who really wanted to learn, I concentrated on them, and as long as the other ones didn't stop me from doing that, I just let them glide by.
Sometimes with guests we've had in the past, and service in whatever countries, they're under a lot of pressure from the local host country counterpart to either not make them look bad or to perform so well to make them look really good. Did you experience anything like that?
Sometimes, especially when I was at the grade school initially, the English teacher there wasn't very good in English, so I think she had kind of a problem with having an actual English speaker there.
Sure.
When I was in the university, I was the English teacher, so there was no conflict, and pretty much the university director allowed me to grade the students however I wanted, but I just couldn't fail anyone. That was kind of the unwritten rule. You don't fail anybody. But they had, like its equivalent of an A, B, or C, and I could do that, no problem. And I gave all the bad students who didn't try C's, and then I kind of graded upward on the curve from there.
Are you still in contact with any of your students?
Not with the students, because I got married in Armenia to an Armenian girl, so from the capital. I kind of concentrated with my friends in the capital, Yerevan, where she lives, and that's where we've kept good contact with her family and friends.
Sure. Well, congratulations. That's really bringing the world home.
Oh, actually, one funny thing is, at least in the first 3 groups when I was there, probably at least half of the males, Peace Corps volunteers, married to Armenian girls. It was just like a joke that as soon as you arrive in the country, it's like, oh, you're going to get married, you're going to get married. And of course, no one believed me.
Do they all look like the Kardashian sisters? Is that why?
Pretty much, even better. Okay. And I guess, and it's true. I mean, half the volunteers got married.
Tell us a little bit how your experience, besides being married, has influenced your life since then. You left Armenia in '97.
Well, we actually stayed 1 more year in Armenia because my wife wasn't quite ready to move out of the country yet. So we stayed 1 more year. I got a job working for the UN translating documents, and then I served as a election monitor for a presidential election, which we can talk about later perhaps. And then after that, in '98, we got all our paperwork ready. We moved to my home area, which is the Boston area, and she doesn't like the cold, so we spent 1 year in Boston. And then after I told her about my trip to Hawaii back in '91, she was like, let's go visit. And my brother was here, and we visited my brother, and we never left. So we've been here for 10 years.
Wonderful.
And we 4 years ago, we opened an Armenian restaurant in downtown Honolulu called Cafe Europa, cafe with a K. And it's been a big hit. The people really like our food, and so we're bringing Armenia to Hawaii.
I bet that is. What kind of food
Well,
do Armenians like? What kind of food do you
Lots of
present?
vegetables like eggplants, and we do different ideas. Our biggest hit is actually something from the Russians that we borrowed, the stroganoff, beef stroganoff, and that's everyone in downtown knows our stroganoff, and it's a big hit. But we have a lot of vegetarian items, sandwiches. We do chicken and lamb shawarma, which is the fresh meat on the grill that we slice off.
Oh, yes.
Very popular. So those would be our 3 biggest items.
Post Peace Corps service, this is very interesting to me. You're able to stay on in the country. We've heard these kinds of experiences from other volunteers who fall in love with the place they're at. You go to and you're able to find work with other
International
agencies.
organizations. Yeah, I did a couple of things.
Tell us a little bit about that. How easy was that?
Place. I did some substitute teaching for the American school in Yerevan, and that connected me to the person at the UN who needed documents translated and edited. And we did that as long as we could, and then we decided we're ready to go to America.
And the history of the country, was that, were they...
Well, the
obviously
Armenians are very
Armenia
proud.
has been, I understand it has been occupied by a number of different foreigners over the eons, over
Yes.
the centuries anyways. And from Roman times to Byzantine and on into the Ottoman Empire, and there's a lot of ongoing conflict between Turkey and Armenia, and accusations from all fronts about who did what to who, and so now you're there as a private citizen, essentially. How did they accept you? Was there a difference at that point between your...
No, it was exactly the same, and now I was a little more free to where I could volunteer to be the election observer for the presidential election, whereas a Peace Corps volunteer would be strictly neutral and stay away from anything like that.
Okay.
And just one quick instance of that story. Now, obviously, there was still the same corruption as the previous in '96, but this time they covered up a little more, made it look prettier. But I actually discovered the biggest fraud of the election, in that they had faked one election protocol from a precinct, and because I could actually speak Armenian, unlike the other European people who were there, I understood the whole conversation that was going on about, okay, get rid of the fake documents and bring the new one, and so I was actually able to confront them, and even though they tore it up and dumped it in the trash, we were able to get that and bring it to the observers.
And the resolve was favorable and honest, and...
No, the incumbent still won, but at least I did my little part and just try to make things better over time. It does get better every time.
And so, you say that obviously you're still in touch with people there, especially through your wife's family. Is there, how do you think that in the years that Peace Corps has been there, or there's been American influence, if you will, or at least American assistance, or whatever Peace Corps has accomplished there, among other efforts on the part of the United States? Has life improved in Armenia?
Life has improved.
Tell us what you think about what's happened in the last, since '97, or '98, '99, when you left.
Well, even when I first arrived there, we could see improvements over the whole 3 years actually I was there, and staying in touch. Things are getting better. For the middle class, it's still hard to survive. People basically survive on remittances, which is the men of Armenia who leave the country to go work in Russia, America, or Europe, sending money back. And without that, Armenia would be in big trouble, because there's really no social safety net. And veterans get maybe $20 a month pension. I mean, you can't live on that. You can't even pay your rent or anything like that. And they're still technically at a state of war with Azerbaijan over the Karabakh region. So that's always could flare up.
Each side claiming that's their territory.
Right, and what Stalin did was divide and conquer. So he put Armenians inside Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijanis inside Armenia. And now, when the Soviet Union fell apart, everyone wanted to kind of connect back with their original homeland. So the big war in '89 through '93. Armenia won the initial round, but it's still not resolved. And then Turkey has a blockade, and then to the against Armenia. To the south is Iran, which they have to be friends with, but the trade route isn't very good anyway. It's very mountainous. And to the north they have Georgia, so most all supplies come through the Black Sea ports into Georgia, down into Armenia. And of course, as you know, Georgia had the war with Russia several months ago, and that affected Armenia indirectly because all the supplies are coming through there. So otherwise it has to be flown in, which is very expensive. So they're still strangleholded, surrounded on 3 sides by potential enemies, and then a friend to the north that has their own trouble.
Armenian population is, as I understand it, mostly Armenian.
Yeah, it's probably about 95% now Armenian, with the rest being Russians. And they have some Kurds and Yazidis, small minorities which have no issues whatsoever. So because of the war, all the Azerbaijanis, about 6 or 7% of the population left, and then the Armenians in Azerbaijan who weren't killed ran away and came to Armenia. So that they have a refugee problem with these people. Plus, in '88, there was an earthquake in the northern part of the country that killed 25,000 people and made 500,000 people homeless. And that's right when the Soviet Union was collapsing. So even when I was there in '97, there were still people living in temporary housing. You know, that's going on 8 years, and some people still today, I think, are still in temporary housing.
Well, do you feel that from your vantage point now, and having been there, is progress being made in Armenia in any front? Economically,
Economically, it's slowly getting better for everybody. But the one report I heard was 44 families control 55% of the economy. And it's very corrupt. I mean, everyone will tell you it's corrupt. I mean, that goes without a doubt. So that's a problem. Then politically, things were getting a little better until the last presidential election in 2008, sorry, where they actually, when they shut down the protesters, they actually shot several and killed them, which was the first time Armenians killed Armenians. So that was very shocking, very disappointing, and that kind of soured any hope that the opposition and the government could kind of work together. So that's the issue, the problem they have now.
Well, as the country is part of the World Trade Organization, and world trade around the world is pretty shaky at the moment, as we all understand and intuit, I think. Because of Armenia's position there, do you, from a standpoint of Peace Corps service, is there anything that Peace Corps can do to improve Armenian situation? I read at the peacecorps.gov site on Armenia, there was besides a lot of information, there's information about how to support projects in Armenia. One of the projects was a school, a college, perhaps the one that you taught at, because it said it's the only college outside of the capital city, and I don't remember that they gave the name. But anyways, they don't have a library. They have a library, but it's kept locked up. All the books are sodden and
probably Soviet
and Soviet era and etc. No modern books, and so they're asking for book donations, etc. Is there anything that you're involved in now that you'd like to have our viewers be aware of in terms of what's going on in Armenia, or anything that you're working with?
Well, as far as in Armenia, there's, the Peace Corps has lots of different programs. When I was there, I set up different things to try to help people. But what we're doing in Hawaii is, I'm also a part-time worker at the state capitol, and 42 states have recognized the Armenian genocide, and this year we're trying to get Hawaii, the legislature, to recognize that the Armenian genocide did in fact happen and become the 43rd state. So that's what we're pushing through now.
What is the Armenian genocide?
All right, well, back in 1917, during the First World War, the Turks killed up to 1.5 million Armenians, and then deported the rest from Western Armenia, which is eastern Turkey, where Mount Ararat is. And after that, they pretty much deny that it happened. They say it didn't happen, and they make all sorts of different excuses. So Armenian Americans have been trying to get America and the different states to recognize that it did happen. And like I said, Hawaii will be hopefully number 43. And anyone who's interested can contact Senator Sam Sloan's office. He's pushing it in the Senate. And hopefully we can do it this year.
I mean, Hawaii would be number 43 of the United States to support Armenia's claim of genocide.
Yes.
And so how exactly could people be involved here in Hawaii? You say you're working with the legislature. Do you elaborate a little bit more for our viewers?
Sure. Like I said, it's originating out of Senator Sam Sloan's office, and so anyone who goes to the hawaii.capitol.gov website can look up, find out about the resolution, contact through Senator Sloan's office if they want to send in supporting information, testimony, or any kind of supporting emails. That would be great, because we're just trying to get, it's not that Hawaii doesn't want to recognize the genocide. I just don't think there's Armenians have ever brought it up in Hawaii before, because there's such a small community.
In the minute or so that we have left, then what effect would this have on Armenia by recognizing this atrocity? For what? Other than knowledge.
Knowledge, and I think the Armenians, they've lost their land, they lost their relatives, and now they're losing their history because the Turks deny that it happened. So every little step that either states or nations make to say that this is part of the historical record and you can't say it didn't happen, I think that would make Armenians, wherever they're located, in Hawaii or in Armenia, around the world, happy that it's gone on.
Taking a cue from the Holocaust deniers, I guess, to try to revise history and the negative
Just denial.
Yeah.
And when someone, my own life has relatives who were killed in the most brutal, barbarian way, that's something they don't want to have denied.
And they're not necessarily looking for some kind of reparation or
Well,
at this
the
point.
ultimate dream would be to get Iraq back, because Armenia is the only country in the world whose national symbol is in a different country. But I think right now it's more of just to correct the historical record and say it did happen and stop denying it.
And would that include a redrawing of the boundaries of Armenia, perhaps?
They would love it. I personally think that that's well beyond the scope of that it could happen.
Yeah. Well, Frank, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming.
It went by so fast.
We learned a lot about a very interesting country. We hope that, do you ever think you'd go back
We're
and
actually
service
planning,
in Armenia?
Well, not in service, but we're planning to go back for the first time, perhaps this summer. So we're excited.
Well, maybe we can get an update from you. We appreciate your visit today, your time and input into our understanding of some of the countries that the Peace Corps serves. Again, Armenia, I think, plays a big part in the future of the world, in that area of the world anyways. And to our viewers, we hope that our program today of Bring the World Home has given you some insight into the life of a Peace Corps volunteer. We ask that you investigate Peace Corps further at peacecorps.gov, and numbers that you see on the screen and the websites are available for further information. Again, thank you to our viewers. Good night.